turn 1 for Thomas Herzog.
Now this is definitely what Michael Jacobs looking to do. I mean, one of the reasons he's playing this deck is he feels like he's a favorite in the matchup. The matchup's going so well for him, in fact, he actually has cut down a little bit on the amount of Cavernous Souls he has.
Only 1.
Yeah, and then and also cutting down a little bit on his reliance on Lingering Souls, yeah. So a gut shot to the Delver of Secrets. Michael Jacob just wants to stay ahead of Thomas, and this is definitely the best possible scenario for MJ, assuming that he hits all his land drops. He's got some interactive spells. He wants to just not stay. He wants to just stay relatively even, and he knows that he'll win the game going long just because he has a little bit more big stuff.
Right there, obviously we have the deck lists for these two players. These players do not. If you're Michael Jacob and you see this opening, suddenly there's more of a question mark about what your opponent is playing.
Yeah, he's probably going to default to assuming that it's similar to what Christian Calcano played.
Yeah, that would be my default.
Which is definitely not actually that accurate, but
MJ misses a third land.
Ooh. Well, fortunately, this is definitely the type of situation where he's not under any pressure, so he can afford to sit here a little bit.
Absolutely. Ponder. Mana Leak from Michael Jacob.
That's a veteran move. An awful lot of people don't just counter Ponder like that, but particularly when you're a little mana light, that's one less turn before MJ would have to discard.
Absolutely. We see a Seachrome Coast now from Thomas Herzog.
So now Island, Seachrome Coast, Sulphur Falls. I think the Seachrome Coast is what's really giving MJ kind of cause to sit back and, he's sort of right now, he's just trying to get some information. He wants to know what's even happening right now.
Yet another red source. Ponder number 2 from Thomas Herzog.
This time playing the third land first, not wanting to get it countered.
Which is really interesting, actually. I mean, the Ponder obviously is very powerful in making a card selection happen for you so that you can sculpt out your game. And yet at the same time, if you do this Ponder without laying the land, you're trying to bait out a counterspell. So clearly he would rather get the selection than, if his opponent has a counterspell, than take it out of his hand.
Yes, and or he potentially just didn't even think about it and instinctually just plays his land first. It's hard to tell.
This is true.
So,
I mean, sometimes one thing you can try to do at times is use a card like that as a duress.
Yes, particularly like if, for instance, if he had a Geist of St. Traft here and he wanted to try to sneak it past counter magic.
Oh, probe for 2 life. 3 Blade Splicers, Doom Blade, Restoration Angel, Phantasmal Image.
Well, now this is a pretty decent hand against a Geist of St. Traft plan. However, Thomas is on the Blade Splicers. So a little bit tougher of a sit-up, but all things considered, not too bad. It's strange because this is one of those hands where obviously MJ's Manuscript, but he's only 1 land away from an awful lot of business.
Yeah, absolutely. And the thing about this too is that there is a distinct archetype advantage in Michael Jacobs' deck versus Thomas's deck. If Thomas were a more aggressive build, like say a Pike build, we see a Ponder from Thomas Herzog now that the coast is definitely clear. If Thomas were a Pike deck, I think Michael Jacobs' strategy would be a little bit more precarious, but because Thomas has slowed up his deck in certain ways to make Angel happen and make Bonfire happen, it does make it easier for Michael to be able to take advantage of that time.
And it should be noted, though, that the Bonfire does provide a very interesting trump that MJ might not be familiar with playing against. The Bonfire is particularly effective in creature-based decks.
Delver gets Doombladed. This is very, very true, particularly since Michael's plan to control the table is creatures.
So MJ hits his 3rd land finally. Thomas, leading with the Delver, probably just trying to draw out that Doomblade so that the coast is clear for the Angels that are surely in his hand.
For those of you who are just joining us, I'm Adrian Sullivan, joined in the booth by Patrick Chapin. This is round 1 of the Star City Games Open Series here in Detroit. We see a Blade Splicer from Thomas Herzog.
MJ, deliberating. He's got to represent the Mana Leak, but at this point, MJ's just going to start committing more to the board. He's going to just Blade Splicer after Blade Splicer after Blade Splicer. But it's situations like this where I could see the Bonfire really paying off.
One of the things about Christian Calcano's list, if you watch that play at, was that Minneapolis or was that SCG?
Yes.
Yeah, Minneapolis. Is that there were certainly many moments where the synergy of the table was just blown asunder by these timely bonfires. You'd see Delver on both sides, and then suddenly just this ridiculous board change. So it's nothing to sneeze at.
Absolutely. Bonfire, definitely one of the best cards from Avacyn Restored. And it's not even like you need to count on miracling it. Just being able to Bonfire for 1 or 2, just hard casting it, it's been very effective. So now we've got dueling Blade Splicers with the Golem token. Thomas slightly ahead on mana, but knows that MJ's hand is full of gas. We don't yet know what's in Thomas's hand, but they are playing a very similar style deck. The difference being MJ having Doom Blades, Thomas having Bond, with MJ having slightly more big game and like in Lingering Souls and Sun Titan instead of Delver of Secrets.
Yeah, I mean, Michael is way more set up for typical long games, although Thomas can wrench that away with the bonfire at the right time.
That's it. I think it's pretty evenish. Game one. Thomas does have a few other random trumps, like Desolate Lighthouse is actually...
Oh, he's got Desolate Lighthouse. Wow.
Now, MJ has vaulted the Archangel, so it's not like he doesn't have a weapon of his own, but the Archangel doesn't match up super well here.
A Golem comes in from Thomas Herzog.
So now MJ is going to try to get
Takes
ahead
it.
here. He's got access to Phantasmal Image to continue copying. He's got... Oh, it looks like he's going to be running the Angel plan. He's just trying to get a little bit of a tempo on Thomas. So far, the matchup has been... The game's been extremely even despite MJ missing his third land drop.
Michael says go. Thomas lays a land. We're going to probably see that end of turn Angel.
He's definitely considering it. Oh, he represents...
Oh, now this time, unlike last turn, he does block.
It's interesting blocking. Wow.
Gut shot on the Blade
This is
Splicer.
going to be fantastic. As
long as there's no mana leak, this is going to be fantastic.
Yep.
And the mana leak. So there is a gut shot on the Blade Splicer, making the Thomas's Golem better than Michael's Golem, because Thomas's will have first strike. Then Michael responds by using the Angel to try to make a fresh Blade Splicer and protect it from the gut shot, and Thomas has the mana leak. And then again, back to Michael's turn. Blade Splicer number 2 of 3 comes down.
Yep, and he's actually got the Phantasmal Image as well, so he's definitely going to be overwhelming with the just the sheer number of the Golem tokens, and he's probably asking himself, what kind of red cards does Thomas have? At this point, I got to imagine that MJ's picturing Bonfire as being one of those.
Oh yeah, I mean that's one of the things I think when you see someone that's playing a Delver deck and they have red, Bonfire is the first card that I think you should think of.
It just adds such a good dimension for the creature on creature matchups, and that's one of the reasons why it's not as bad for MJ to be in these trades, even if he ends up down a little bit.
Yeah.
Because if the board gets too big, he's setting himself up to lose everything.
I mean, one of the classic things about like the idea of these creature matchups, you used to see a long time ago, cards like Wrath of God sometimes make appearances, but they really don't work with what your deck is doing. Bonfire, on the other hand, since it doesn't blow up your own board, actually works directly with your actual plan. So it's a really awesome weapon for a deck like what Thomas is playing.
So MJ, now that he's up to 5 mana, plays Phantasmal Image, copying a Blade Splicer to give him the Blade Splicer advantage, and now he's dropping Lingering Souls. He's definitely leaving himself exposed to Bonfire, but at this point there's nothing he can really do about it. He's got to make forward progress on the game. Thomas deliberating on whether or not to let the Lingering Souls resolve. Yeah. This is definitely the right order to do it in too, because even if the Lingering Souls gets countered, he'll have the flashback.
We were talking earlier this morning about the concept of fear. Just because someone might have a weapon, living in fear of it is almost always a mistake.
I mean, he's gonna, if he has the Bonfire, he's gonna have it next turn too.
Yeah.
So what's your plan?
Right? Like.
So Thomas untaps 6 land, a Golem, and a Blade Splicer. Quite a few more cards in hand, but facing down a board of 2 Golems, 2 Blade Splicers, and 2 Lingering Soul Spirits. All things considered, MJ's not in too bad a shape right here. It's really going to come down to their breakers, and that's why I think Bonfire is going to end up being so valuable for Thomas.
One of the crazy things about the Blade Splicer Angel builds, whether they're a more controlling deck like Michael has, or whether they're a more aggressive deck like Thomas has, is that once you get to the middle portion of the game like this, the question of whether you even attack becomes really problematic, because Angel can just come out of the sky and be really, oh, look at that.
There's the Bonfire. That about.
And that looks like that's a hard cast Bonfire?
It is.
Yeah.
And he accidentally revealed the Snapcaster Mages in his hand, which means he has another Bonfire on call when needed.
And look at this. MJ, no waiting. He knows he has to just block it, and if you've got the Vapor Snag, you've got the Vapor Snag. And remember, again, that Blade Splicer on Thomas's side makes his Golem first strike.
Yeah. So, Thomas content to trade with one of MJ's Golems. Not 100% sure that was the right attack there, but it depends on his hand. Obviously, he may have just been representing Vapor Snag. In this case, I think it's super important for MJ to try to press this advantage game one, because I think this sideboarding actually might favor Thomas a little bit, with access to things like Sword of War and Peace, like we talked about, and Consecrated Sphinx.
And he can also, if he feels like it's important, go big as well. He's got you already said Consecrated Sphinx, but he's got Gideon. So I mean, he can go to the go big space.
Absolutely, and that's what I think a lot of these Delver matchups they try to do is try to be just one notch bigger than the other person after board.
Yeah.
In one, they often want to be really fast, but
And I think the debate between lots of people that have been playing Delver about which path is better is really interesting. I don't really know if I have an opinion yet, but it's definitely clear that there are champions of both sides of that call. And we have Lingering Souls, flashback from Michael Jacob. Then Thomas goes main phase, Snapcaster Mage, probably for Ponder. Yep, there it is. Just a little bit more fixing, trying to find something else to do.
love the interaction between Ponder and Bonfire too. It's not just the looking for your bonfires, it's the setting it up so that you can bonfire on the turn that you want to. So, Thomas trying to press this advantage. He's a little bit ahead on the board, but the fact that he just has access to more cards right now
Delver
means he wants to keep pushing it. So Delver of Secret, Snapcaster Mage, and the Blade Splicer without the Golem versus a Golem and 2 Lingering Souls. Both players, plenty of mana doing their thing. So what's MJ looking to draw right now? Like, obviously he'd love to see Ponder so that he can look for something else, or the Alchemy, but what is he really trying to do? How is he going to get ahead from this board?
I mean, I think here's another Phantasmal image, probably on the Blade Splicer of Thomas Herzog.
It's tricky that MJ's already used so many of his Blade Splicers, so that his Angels are a lot less live.
And there we have that Golem coming out. I mean, I think at this point, he has a really solid board presence. Is he at a point where he even just might want to have an Alchemy just to get more useful cards in number?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, Alchemy would be a fantastic draw right here, particularly given how close he is to flashing it back.
And you can see this very aggressive swing here. All of the creatures that can attack do. And he wants to make this clock just evaporate.
Well, and part of it is that one of his last 2 cards, I believe, is an Angel, and he wants to lure Thomas into attacking into the Angel.
We have a gut shot on the image of the Blade Splicer, and I believe a double block on the Golem, which, if Michael doesn't do any other plays, will allow those 2 creatures to kill the Golem.
Yep, they're still going to die, though.
Yep.
Simplifying the board a bit, MJ's hope that Thomas's Delver flips, flies, and runs face first into an Angel.
So the specific position of what's happening right now makes it pretty likely that Thomas does not have a bonfire in the top couple of cards of his deck.
Absolutely. There's no way he'd trade if he did.
MJ with a fresh Lingering Souls.
Continuing to advance the board. Safe with the information that there's no bonfire coming. Oh, and he draws out the Mana Leak. Or does he?
Oh.
This is a heck of a bluff if Thomas is just representing the Snap Mana Leak and then untap and doesn't really have it.
There it is.
This is interesting. MJ behind in a lot of ways, but starting to press the board in a way that if Thomas doesn't turn this around pretty quick, we
have a reveal. We expected a probable reveal of some kind. I can't tell what it is, though.
Yeah, I mean, the
old
old
Vapor
Ponder
Snag? I think that might have been a Vapor Snag. I couldn't quite tell.
Vapor Snag definitely very, very useful on the Golem here.
Ponder. It could have been a Ponder as well. Unfortunately, it was a Ponder that was revealed. Our names there at the bottom covering up the deck top. For those of you who are just joining us, our names are Adrian Sullivan and Patrick Chapin.
Yo.
Here in Detroit.
I love this city.
I do too. This is a great city. Come get a Coney.
Thomas with the Flip Delver. The Insectile Abomination is about the only board presence he has at this point, but he does have a few cards. MJ fell behind from a bonfire, but fortunately several Blade Splicers and several Lingering Souls have given him an awful lot of counterplay, and I think he's definitely ahead at the moment.
In for 3, says Thomas Herzog. Now this is always the interesting question when both players are taking the aggressive stance, because one player is often wrong.
Well, but the thing is that sometimes it changes from turn to turn.
Oh, absolutely.
And both players have the information of their hand, but not always perfect information of the other.
I mean, when we don't have perfect information, as a player sitting in that chair, it makes a huge difference, which is one of the reasons Gitaxian Probe is so incredibly valuable.
This is also one of those situations. So MJ attacking for
5.
with 2 spirits and a golem.
Are we going to see a Snapcaster?
This is also one of those situations where it may just be that whoever the first person is to stop attacking is going to start falling behind. So even the person who doesn't really want to be attacking has to do it.
So kind of like a Fires of Yavimaya mirror match from 1999
Right,
or so.
even when you're behind in the race,
you got to attack.
If you ever don't attack, you're falling farther behind.
And here we have the insect hanging back, facing death on the next turn unless something happens. Thomas Herzog.
Now he kept with his ponder, right?
Yeah.
So this has got to be a pretty good card here. I mean, he knew what the board was looking like.
Bonfire. Miracled Bonfire. Set it up a couple turns down.
Absolutely.
Wow.
Now Thomas has got to be asking himself, is it safe to attack with an insect?
Such a crazy question you have to ask yourself.
And there's that angel we talked about.
Wasn't that the same one that he saw at the beginning of the game?
No. There's only one angel, right?
Yeah. So he saw that already.
No.
Oh, there's one other. Yeah. Never mind.
He saw 3 blade splices.
Yeah. I did not see the other angel at the top left of the graveyard. Okay. And a Snapcaster makes the angel not work.
So?
Actually, pardon me, that's incorrect. What did it do? Did it it gut-shotted.
Right,
Snapcaster
just for the trade.
gut-shotted for the trade.
Right, and you could do worse, but now Thomas is facing down the
Death
Lingering
again.
Souls flashback at 2 life, and he knows his top card. His fate has probably been sealed, right?
What's the opposite of Fate Seal?
The
Scry. Scry. There we go. I couldn't remember the...
Well, no, there's also the other one, the opposite of Fate Seal, where your opponent gets to look at your deck
right.
decide.
Well, that's Fate Seal, right?
If you do it to your opponent, it's Fate Seal.
Okay. In comes Snapcaster.
He's certainly representing that he wants MJ to block here. It is unlikely that MJ will.
And he's like, well, I'll go to 3.
MJ going in for the kill. We're going to find out, does Thomas really have the angel that he's
Angel,
bluffing?
Vapor Snag, Gut Shot. Tap some stuff for no effect. Snapcaster for Gut Shot. Snapcaster for Vapor Snag.
Snapcaster. Does he have Snag in his graveyard?
I don't
I think it's just the Gut Shot.
He's already used the 1 Gut Shot.
Yep.
Is there a second?
There is another.
There it is. And Thomas dropping to 1.
But MJ with no blockers facing 4 power worth of attackers at only 3 life. This is very, very close. MJ's gonna need another blocker. This game is down to the wire.
Gideon. Oh, that's a blocker. And look at all that mana open. There's nothing that Thomas can do to stop that from resolving.
Absolutely.
He's only got 1 card in hand.
Now, it is interesting. Vapor Snag is lethal here. And this is a fresh card. Thomas does not know what this card is. An awful lot of things could win here. It's obviously not a bonfire at this point. Vapor Snag would win. Restoration Angel would win. Blade Splicer itself would... No, not do it.
In they come. Block.
Looks like this is an act of desperation.
I see a Mana Leak in Thomas's hand.
And a Blade Splicer. I think this is all she wrote. MJ eking out the all-important game
Thomas puts it away.
Wow, so MJ up 1-0 with Esper control.
Okay,
impressive.
So where do you think he's going to go? MJ, if I were MJ, I actually really like Negate in this, just because of like the bonfires, fighting over a Mana Leak,
Agree
things
completely.
like that.
Negate's not that bad against Delver in the first place, and Bonfire provides is a huge trump for being able to counter it. It's absolutely fantastic.
I mean, in the decks that I'm running in Standard right now, if I'm running blue, I like Negate as an anti-Delver weapon right now. I know that Brad Nelson, amongst others, have said that cards like Negate aren't where the fight is at, but I do think the fight gets to stop your snag. Oh, you've got 3 mana up? I don't care.
And I think that regardless of whether or not it's right for blue-white, fighting blue-white Delver, blue-red has access to Bonfire. And MJ's not playing a traditional Delver deck anyway. He's got a few cards that are not as valuable.
At the same time, I don't think Dissipate is the right call, because I think that extra mana is very huge in a matchup where it is possible to fall behind.
Now, I'm not positive on that one. I could see that it might not be right, although MJ would probably have more experience in the situation than me. He might want it because of its ability to counter Bonfire and Restoration Angel. There's also, I don't know if MJ knows who Thomas Herzog is or not, but there's something to be said about at amateur events, playing a few more slower general purpose cards to just sort of give you some opportunity to play.
What do you think about Batterskull? I think that might be a very reasonable weapon for MJ. Obviously, a Vapor Snag means that it takes a lot of mana to reset a Batterskull, but life gain, I think, is a very potent thing for MJ if he wants to have a game draw out.
Absolutely. Plus, I know that MJ a little bit has an infatuation with Batterskull and Lingering Souls decks.
He and I love something in common then. There are a couple of things he and I both love.
I would not be surprised if MJ...
too.
Yeah. I would not be surprised if MJ boards in Batterskull against all of his opponents. He has an unnatural love for just equipping. He doesn't ever bounce it either. He just wants to move it over.
Day of Judgment. I'm not sure how I feel about that.
Yeah, I don't think he's going to day. I think he's going to rely on the match playing out somewhat like it did in Game 1, where there's just sort of this attrition-y type situation.
Even against the possibility of Bonfire making the board really to his disadvantage? Yeah,
I think he's still, like, if things are going poorly, then Day of Judgment mostly catches up.
Okay.
And that's not even, it doesn't even put him ahead the same way Bonfire hits the person for the damage.
And
I think MJ's going to be more drawn to cards like Sun Titan.
I was going to say, and then finally Sun Titan, continuing the Go Big theme with the phantasmal images. Are those basically it? Are we going to see a Ghost Quarter come in because he's going bigger?
No. Ghost Quarter is definitely primarily for either for casting Wolf Run.
Well, yeah, I understand that it's targeted for that, but I'm thinking about it as taps for 1 mana.
No. Okay. I think these Delver decks are capable of finding, or not Delver, but these Snapcaster Ponder decks.
Yes.
They can find their land drops so easily anyway.
Okay.
I think more than anything, he might also actually be debating on Nile Spellbomb. I'm not sure if he's going to do it or not. He'll probably get away from it, but sometimes it is a way to draw a few more land anyway, but it also lets you counter Snapcaster Mage as a dissipate or as a cantrip.
So on the other side of the table, I think that Thomas actually is going to have a very specific set of plans. I think Thomas is going to bring in Dissipate because he's going to perceive his opponent as perhaps being a little bit slower than him. I think that he's
hitting Lingering Souls.
Yeah, and hitting Lingering Souls. I think he's going to bring in 2 Sword of War and Peace. I think he's also going to bring in Consecrated Sphinx. And then the question to me becomes, does he bring in Gideon and Phantasmal Image or not? Those are bigger question marks. And then a lot of people like the Surgical Extraction as a way in a late game via Thought Scours and stuff like that to Surgical to stop a Snapcaster. And also there's Lingering Souls to be talked about. But I always have mixed feelings about that because drawing the Surgical feels really gross a lot of times.
Yeah, I think the Surgical is primarily for Unburial Rites decks.
Yes.
And he's not sure if MJ is an Unburial Rites deck or not. But at this point, I don't like... It's probably just going to come down to whether or not he's one of those people who boards in Surgical against everybody.
Yeah, or but there are those people. I've seen Surgical Snapcaster so many times, and I just don't know how I feel about it.
I think the bigger question is how many of Thomas's cards does he actually want to take out?
This is a good question.
I wouldn't be surprised if he actually boards his Phantasmal Image out, because he saw Blade Splicer out of MJ, which means that MJ doesn't have Geist of Saint Traft. And he has no reason to believe that Phantasmal Image is particularly valuable here.
Well, like, there's the debate, like we said before, the 2 camps, right? The 2 camps on Delver in, quote-unquote, we'll call them Snapcaster Angel Mirrors. There's the one camp that's like, the Delver will give me free wins. And then there's the other camp that says, the Delver will be outclassed. And depending on what camp he is, if he is a Delver will be outclassed kind of philosophy, he's got 4 easy outs.
Well, he's got to start with Gut Shot, though. I mean, the Gut Shot's got to be the first thing to go.
Yeah, I agree.
The question he's got to ask himself is, does he feel confident that his Delver of Secrets could actually power through a Lingering Souls? Because that's a tough way to do it.
Yeah.
But if, on the other side, if he's using the Delver of Secrets to block, Delver of Secrets can hold off Lingering Souls for a very long time. So I think it might be that it's important enough for him to have flying blockers that he keeps them in. All right, so Thomas,
back to the action.
Leading off. Starts with the Delver of Secrets, and it's immediately Gut Shot from MJ. Doesn't even want to wait to draw his card and see what he has. Now this is a little bit of a leak because of mental misstep. It reveals that you don't have mental misstep in your own deck. However, Thomas taps the Seachrome Coast, Thought Scours. As is the norm, Mental Notes himself.
I really love that the Mental Note reprint, so to speak, has been seeing as much play as it has.
Absolutely, and it's significantly better than Mental Note because of its ability to change targets.
Delver in play for Thomas Herzog. We see which camp he's in.
Absolutely, and it may be that he would take it out in a blue-white matchup, but as I said, just blocking Lingering Souls is just too important.
Yeah. Well, I have a lot of sympathy for people that keep in Delver. I'm not, without going to the black like Michael Jacob has, I feel like Michael Jacob's deck is more reasonable to me than where Sam Black went. When you're going straight blue-white, I feel like losing the Delver is just a rough one. Ponder from Michael Jacob, and oh my goodness gracious, it's a blackout. We can't see anything.
So MJ choosing an awful lot of black mana here.
Okay.
So Ponder resolves. MJ decides to keep. Looks like MJ has plenty of land, a pretty good mix. Thomas, meanwhile, Delver of Secrets #2, making an appearance. It is interesting that MJ's heavy use of Doomblades means that Delver of Secrets is generally much less of a problem. However, he doesn't really have the hand to beat a Delver yet, but he wouldn't have kept with Ponder unless he didn't have, if he didn't have a plan.
Elsewhere in the tournament, I've got to report in that Craig Wesco of Pro Tour fame has just lost his first match, starting out 0-1. He has come back from these things before, though, for those of you who are Wesco fans. Back to this match, Michael Jacob laying his second land, Seachrome Coast.
Vapor Snag, flipping the Delver into an Insectile Abomination, a play that I'm sure nobody at home has ever seen. It's interesting that the Insectile Abomination stays a human after flipping because of the tribal synergies.
I actually think that that's a nice touch from a flavor perspective.
That he keeps a little of his humanity?
Right? I mean, Jeff Goldblum did. Phantasmal Image.
Now this is
a risky one.
Well, I mean, there's no Doomblade at this point, and so if it's a Dismember, he's blown out. But
it's not going to be able to do anything exciting.
Well, MJ's certainly representing, trying to put the fear of God into him that there's going to be a double gut shot, but you and I know that that's not even possible. So we have two Insectile Abominations facing down an empty board. MJ finally has access to Doomblade, though.
Look at that swamp. Is that revised?
Yeah, MJ's very, very colorblind, and he actually finds that it's easier to use white-bordered basic land, particularly if he has any fetch lands, and he does here. He has Evolving Wild.
Right.
So that when he searches through his deck, he can immediately know which are the cards to choose. So, MJ, Doomblading.
In for 3 from the Image, which is a copy of a flipped Delver, the Insectile Aberration.
Thomas continuing to advance the board. We're going to see another Ponder here. Snapcaster, flashing back Ponder. Thomas taking a look. Tanking after each card. So there's that negate we talked about. MJ definitely a little behind on board. He needs to make some tempo plays.
Snappy. Gut shot.
No, not a bad state of affairs, but I think there's a real risk here of Thomas just starting to run away with things if he can play a 4th land and start on the Angel plan. MJ has a few things in his hand, but he's definitely a click behind and doesn't have the tools to really pull ahead yet. Right now, he's mostly trying to just slow the game down.
Boom. Thank you. Like, that land that Thomas dropped, it's the Evolving Wilds. Not being able to produce immediate mana, I think, was pretty significant there.
It's kind of interesting that Thomas actually attacked there.
Yeah.
I mean, there's no way MJ can not block, and it seems like that trade is hugely favorable for MJ. He just wants to slow the game down, and Thomas has access to Bonfire.
Sometimes the more aggressive play is not attacking.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Thomas sacrifices. He has 2 Evolving Wilds.
He's getting a mountain here, right?
1 mountain, 1 plains, and 6 islands.
Absolutely.
There's the mountain.
Yeah, he doesn't have any double white in his main deck. So, for the most part, this should turn everything on with the possible exception of sideboarded Gideon.
One of the things I find very interesting about the Delver builds of Snappy Angel decks is there has seemed to be a consensus that 22 land is about the right number. About 90% of the decks I've seen, there are exceptions, there are absolutely exceptions, but other than what Yuya ran, 20? 19. Other than Yuya's deck, there was a strong consensus at 22 that you can see in deck list after deck list.
I think a big part of that was just the fact that Jared played 22.
Right. Restoration Angel with a Mana Leak hitting it. That could be very well the case. I mean, obviously a deck that succeeded so well at Nashville has a lot of people wanting, for reasonable reasons, to copy success.
Interestingly, I think that it was one of those, Jerry was playing more land, partly because I mean, that's the type of deck builder he is, but also to give an advantage against the amateurs. I think that even in Jerry's deck, 21 land is probably more appropriate.
We see a...
now, Yuya, by the way, he didn't even play Restoration Angel.
Right.
He was playing just a Snapcaster Ponder deck with a little bit lower of a curve, so that
Vapor
19 land was a
Snag.
little more appropriate.
Sorry about that. A Vapor Snag and Restoration Angel revealed by Michael Jacobs' Gitaxian probe that he spends mana on.
Now, what do you think about MJ only playing the one probe? Obviously, most people play a little bit more than that, you know?
I mean, I think his probe might be a 5th Ponder.
But,
I mean, he's got Thought Scour.
He's got three Thought Scours. Yeah, he actually just replaces the 4th Thought Scour with a Gitaxian Probe in this case, from what you might imagine.
There is a lot of value from Knowledge. And as a one-of at some point, he can snappy it into play later. I don't know if it's correct or not, but I don't have a problem with it per se.
Absolutely. It's always interesting to see the mix of, like Yuya, for instance, is famous for often playing no probes. Just playing 4 Thought Scour, 4 Ponder, and he just looks at it.
I was gonna say, he just looks at his opponent. He's like, I know you got.
Absolutely. So MJ pondering again, Blade Splicer and Golem on his side with plenty of mana, versus Thomas, plenty of mana with a Delver. Both players still plenty of tricks in their hand.
Now I remember joking with Bob Maher that his invitational card should just be that your opponent plays with their hand up, and in comes a Golem.
I think actually he might have submitted that one year. There was I believe there was a telepathy variant he had submitted that you could sacrifice to counter a spell. Did not win.
Pretty okay.
Yeah,
Restoration Angel comes down. There are definitely some players that they just have the read. Doomblade, and not enough mana from Thomas Herzog. See that Evolving Wilds, mocking his ability to stop it. He can Vapor Snag his own Angel.
Absolutely.
But he can't Mana Leak it.
And with so much life to work with, I think that, Vapor Snag here,
and then
reasonable play. And there's that negate, costing exactly 2 mana, just like you talked about. It's so important to have enough mana.
Cheap is huge.
In these tempo-based matches.
Cheap is so huge. And we're going to see Thomas go get a Plains? Island? One of the two.
Probably a Plains. If only just to represent more,
Yeah.
Besides, he might actually have that Gideon that we talked about. So, the game continues to be fought over lots of little inches.
Now, Michael Jacob definitely in a strong board presence right now, but at only 9 life, that Delver could represent a quick end to the game.
Absolutely. Plus, he's already used multiple Doomblades, so it's not like he's going to have a huge number of answers to the Delver outside of top deck Snapcasters.
Here we go. What does it say?
Wow.
Oh, is that the game?
That is...
it's going to knock Michael Jacob down to 1.
Exactly. That's going to put MJ on the ropes.
5 from the Bonfire. 3 from the Delver. Go to 1.
Well, this is how the comeback has to start. 17-1. It's interesting that in these aggro control in these tempo-based matchups that the philosophy of Fire really comes in, where you have to measure what is my life total worth, because the other person can just unleash a fury of Vapor Snags, Gut Shots, Flash Creatures, and so on to sneak a few points of damage in. So if you're a little too liberal with your life total early on, you can end up in a situation like this where...
Well, I mean, one of the things, a beginner's mistake about applying Magic Theory is like, oh, card advantage is everything. When you know what? That life total ticks down, and someone can throw away a card. If I Lightning Bolt your face, I'm down a card.
Absolutely. I'm down a card each time until the last one.
then I'm up old.
All right, MJ shuffles. He's going to need a good one. MJ debating his options. Is it time to scoop?
Cavern naming human?
Probably Angel.
Angel, yeah.
One last shot. Does he scare off the attack? He does not, of course.
There it is.
There's the Angel. Love it. Exciting.
Vapor
We've got ourselves a
Snag,
game.
Gut Shot.
Well, yeah,
Those are
Vapor
the
Snake
only
is dead at
things-
any point.
Yep. Any point that he can't theoretically cast a counterspell.
So, interesting.
Now
This
here's
point,
the interesting part
Snapcaster as
too,
well.
right? Like, if MJ attacks, he opens himself up to flash creatures from Thomas. If he doesn't attack, he opens himself up to Thomas drawing cards and killing him sometime.
So, in this case, I think it's safe to attack there because if Thomas had the Angel, he would have Angeled inside of combat.
Fair.
Additionally, you have to just press the advantage.
Oh,
There's too many cards Thomas can draw that will kill MJ immediately.
And now there's a 2-turn clock on Thomas.
Wow. Fantastic. What a comeback if it actually
a
is.
potential comeback.
Absolutely.
What a potential comeback. 7 damage coming in, knocking Thomas, if he takes it, down to 7. Is this the game?
Debating his
I
options.
think it is. That feels like it's the game to me. The way he's just doing his stuff.
Well, if he can produce any blockers at all, there's Blade Splicer.
Okay.
So, he's giving himself a little bit more time. Of course, if MJ has another Angel.
And then he does. I think I see an
Wow.
Angel and a Doomblade.
Wow. An exciting turn of events from one life. But it's not over yet. We don't know what Thomas has. I will be slow rolling this all and has a Thought Scour and just Miracle hopes to draw a
Oh,
Snapcaster.
Dissipate for Michael Jacob.
Now, how ambitious do you think that was there? I guess MJ just...
It could be that I've got Michael's hand wrong.
And that it's not an Angel, that it's just another...
It looked like an Angel to me, though. In for 7. Oh,
that's the
wow.
MJ takes it with his Esper, I guess, hybrid.
Yeah.
Versus Thomas Herzog with Rockadelver. So I think we're going to be... Are we switching to another match?
We are going to see if we have another match available. Now, for those of you who are just joining us, I'm Adrian Sullivan. This is
I'm
Patrick
Patrick
Chapin. Hey! And one of the ways that this works, in general, we want to get as much magic on the camera as possible. So we get a match finished up like this. Our goal